We had Brian Howell, who covers Colorado, on earlier. And now we have Mitch Sherman, theathletic.com, who covers Nebraska. They host Colorado tomorrow. Oh, God, I keep thinking it's Friday. On Saturday evening in Lincoln. And Mitch joins us. Mitch, convince me that Nebraska won't hyperventilate or just blank the bed like they have for so many years when you feel like they maybe are ready to do something a little bit better.
Is this like a self-examination, Smokey? Like,
yes,
are you?
No, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Please help me here.
Well, they didn't hyperventilate last week against UTEP when it was 7-7 and they fumbled inside the 5-yard line. For about 5 minutes there, it seemed like, nothing had changed from previous years when Nebraska had forgotten how to play football in key moments of games. But ultimately, it was a 40-7 win that was a laugher, and the starters were out of the game by one possession into the second half. I think there's something different about this team. There's something different about Matt Rhule's program now in year number 2. There's a certain confidence that comes when you've got a 5-star freshman quarterback out there who can make the throws and look as composed as Dylan Raiola did last week in his collegiate debut. And there's some growth, some real maturity among the Nebraska program, just with the number of veterans that Rhule has on this team. I mean, they had great retention. Something that has plagued Nebraska for several years has just been the turnover within the program. The turnovers on the field, of course, and that didn't stop last year, 31 of them. But the turnover in the program, players would come in, they'd be there a year or two, college football today, and then be gone. Rhule pretty much put an end to that. It's not an in the door and out the door kind of program. He wants to build and develop, and you're seeing the results here at the very start of year 2.
Dylan Raiola looked pretty good last week for a guy who hadn't played college football before. I know that he's going to look like a true freshman at times, but have they built up? It looked to me that they built up the skill positions around him, and the offensive line is pretty good, that they're not going to have to throw everything at him right away.
Yeah, I'd say the offensive line is all right. We'll see. There wasn't a lot of depth there last week. Nebraska had 2 of its top backups who were hurt, minor injuries coming back from things in preseason camp, and those guys are ready to go this week. So they should be able to rotate a little bit more if needed. And if it gets to be a long game into the fourth quarter, I wouldn't expect Nebraska's offensive line to look tired because only 5 players had gotten through and received a lot of reps. Yeah, it's a different group. It totally transformed at the receiver spot. Isaiah Nair is the transfer from Texas, 6'4". He's a kid from the Dallas area who caught a 59-yard touchdown pass last week against UTEP, more than 100 yards receiving. He's one half of that transformed duo on the outside. Jamal Banks is the other half, another 6'4", 220-pound target for Dylan Raiola, who played at Wake Forest through his career and put up big numbers over the last couple of years. And then they're strong at running back too, with really 4 who are getting to share the time. So Nebraska's not a team that's going to wear down because its skill guys are tired into the second, third, and fourth quarters. Huskers, I would say, objectively should have a physical edge really everywhere on the field. And I'm not talking about like athletic ability. I just mean physicality just about everywhere on the field in this matchup against Colorado. The question, is it good enough to overcome the talent and skill of Shedeur Sanders and Travis Hunter?
Mitch, I loved watching Isaiah Nayor at Wyoming, and then I thought when he went to Texas, he was going to, blow up there. They obviously had a lot of competition for him, but is he just finally healthy? You think that's the big thing, that this year is going to allow him to be able to be that explosive player he was a couple of years back?
Yeah, who knows what would have happened? He might be in the NFL right now if he hadn't suffered that ACL injury when he got to Texas. And then last year it was a numbers game. Of course, a ton of talent for Texas at wide receiver, and he just got knocked out of the rotation and had a hard time getting back in. But it's not been for a lack of talent. It's not been for a lack of work ethic. Nebraska loves what he brings to the field as far as the intangibles. Same thing with Jamal Banks. Banks, in fact, was a team leader from the day that he set foot on campus in January. And they had both of these guys here all through the winter and through the spring too. So they've been able to get comfortable with the system here, with the coaches, and of course with Dylan Raiola. But Nayor in particular, he has game-breaking speed. As you said, he put up huge numbers at Wyoming back in 2021. Was clearly a Power 5, Power 4 kind of receiver who was playing in the Mountain West at that time. and has the ability to hurt any defense, whether it's in the Big Ten or if it's against Colorado on Saturday.
Mitch, I know they ran for a lot of yards against UTEP and eventually just wore them down. Do they have somebody that can go 40 or 50? And because I still want to see, and I know everybody would like to have that. I'm not asking for them to have like Bijan Robinson, but well, maybe one day. But do they have that guy that can like be like a bullet through a keyhole? Do they have that ability with anybody?
It might be more at the receiver position. Jalen Lloyd has that kind of speed at the receiver spot. Ja'Cory Barney, the true freshman from Miami, has that kind of speed at the receiver spot. They're going to do things to get the ball into the hands of those two and some other of their receivers who aren't Nayor or Banks in unconventional ways. You saw Barney on kind of an end around play. It was a pass, technically a pass, but he just ran right in front of the quarterback and took it. Those guys have the ability not just to go 40, but 70 or 80 yards. At the running back spot, it's probably Ramir Johnson. He's the third down back. He'll play on first and second down, but his strength is as a third down back. He has game-breaking speed. It's just a matter of finding the holes for him. He's not as big as the other backs, and if he has a hole to go through, then absolutely he can take it the distance.
Mitch, do you think that they will be able to dictate some of the tempo in this game? Because it's very conflicting styles. Dion, their tempo is up. They don't really care about running clock. You saw at the end of the game last week, they were throwing the ball in those situations, as where Matt is going to try to shorten this game and do that. Do you think that they will be able to?
I do think so. And the key last year, or the key for Colorado, the problem for Nebraska when it should have been able to control the tempo, is that the Huskers kept turning it over. And not just turning it over, but making mistakes on fumbled snaps that ended drives. Those didn't even go as turnovers, but they might as well have been turnovers. Jeff Sims, the quarterback last year, contributed to 4 turnovers in that game. And that was really the end of Jeff Sims at Nebraska as a starting quarterback. It was his last start at Nebraska as a quarterback in week 2 last season. So you bring him in from Georgia Tech, you invest in him all offseason, make him a leader of that team, and then he makes it 2 games as a starting quarterback, both losses on the road. And, that goes a long way in what became a 5-7 season for Matt Rhule in year 1. Dylan didn't turn it over in week 1, and it's a start. It's 1 game. Nebraska has to hold on to the football. If it can hold on to the football, then I think it ran the ball well enough last year and should be able to run it better this year in order to control the clock, in order to grind out drives. They probably have the ability to throw it, but I think there'll be times where they keep it on the ground just to, as you said, extend the game, keep away from Shedeur Sanders and keep Colorado off the field, run that clock, and hope to win a game that doesn't get up into the 30s and 40s as far as the points that it takes to win this thing.
Mitch, from the coaches to the interesting quarterbacks to just this rivalry in general, this got a lot of ingredients to be a really fun game on Saturday. What's the anticipation level? What's kind of the buzz this week in Lincoln towards this one?
It's off the charts. And you say, well, these are 2 unranked teams, and Nebraska's got to win over UTEP, and Colorado's got to win over North Dakota State. And, what are the ceilings of these teams? It's probably not a game with college football playoff implications. Not this year. Both programs would like to see that in the future. Who knows? You never know with a 12-team playoff. But the anticipation is intense. It's no different than games in the past that Nebraska's played where it's been a top 5 team. I think Nebraska fans, the Nebraska program, is that hungry to get some legitimacy, to become relevant. It's national TV, Saturday night, NBC. It's a power conference opponent. Nebraska hasn't started the season 2-0 with one of those 2 wins coming against a power conference opponent since 2007. So the appetite to get a win that matters is through the roof. And if you've been to Memorial Stadium for a night game when that place gets rocking, it's as difficult to play. It's as electric of an environment as exists in college football. So I think the fans and the Nebraska players, coaches, everyone involved with the program are excited to get that place juiced up and hope that the Huskers give them a reason to keep it that way. Because if Colorado comes out and gets off to a good start and kind of lets the air out of the building, you're talking about a letdown before the game even gets going.
Yep. No, you're right. And we've seen that happen far too often over the last 7, 8, 10, 12 years. How has Matt Rhule been? I've seen some of that documentary that comes out, the weekly, whatever, the 3. I've seen a couple of clips on him where he stopped practice and was trying to explain to them about the loose stuff that they do that leads to a turnover, a stupid penalty. How has he been leading up to this one?
Good. I think he really likes this team. I think he loves the personnel. He likes the leaders that they have. He likes the fact that he's been able to turn this team over to the players. It's the thing you hear coaches talk about often. If the team is player led, then it can be a great team. If it's coach led, it can be a good team. And Nebraska has a core of leaders, of older players, because of that retention factor that I talked about a few minutes ago. Juniors and seniors, especially on the defensive side, who have taken a lot of ownership, who have come back to be the class of players who are known and are remembered for having turned the corner at Nebraska and having gotten Nebraska back to a place where it's a regular in the postseason, where it can think about the 12-team college football playoff, where it can be a factor in the Big Ten race, where it can play in a game on Saturday night on NBC or Fox, and people around the country want to tune in because it's Nebraska and you recognize that helmet and that uniform. So there is a ton invested in this team among the players. And that's what Matt Rhule is looking for. That's what he's tried to instill over the first 18 months that he's been in charge in Lincoln. And I think he's gotten this team to a place going into his 14th game where he feels very good about who he's sending on the field and the kind of roles that they're in on Saturday night.
All right, Mitch, thank you very much. Good to see you, man. Good to have you on the Zoom. Smokey. Enjoy the weekend. Hopefully, there is something that's different about what happened Saturday evening, Nebraska, Colorado. I don't mind saying that because it's been a while. Mitch Sherman does a great job, covers Nebraska for theathletic.com.